Guantanamo Bay Detention Center must be closed as people are just starting to comprehend the atrocities happening to the detainees. Detainees are subject to enhanced interrogation tactics or torture and lack the full extent of their habeas corpus rights. Although some detainees have very recently gotten the opportunity to challenge their incarceration, Guantanamo Bay still must be closed as it leaves a stain on America's past and present.
"9/11 marked a time of major national crisis. For the first time in a long time, Americans felt like they were unsafe within their own borders. As in any time of crisis, the American people united against a common enemy, Islam. The rage the masses held against Islam blinded them to the morally deficient techniques that were used to fight our enemies, and in the name of national safety, the Guantanamo Bay detention camp rose as a means for our military to fight our enemy, without anything holding them back. Using this new sense of post-9/11 nationalism, the United States military was able to send a dramatically increased number of prisoners to Guantanamo Bay without any form of concrete evidence. The U.S. used the excuse of 9/11 to go on a massive arresting spree. The prisoners at Guantanamo Bay Detention Center were found by the unlawful method of scooping up suspects in the Middle East. Even in cases where there was no evidence of wrongdoing, the suspects were still arrested and interrogated. Most arrests were frightening to the suspects and showed that the horrifying treatment of Guantanamo Bay detainees started long before they even reached the island.
They didn't identify themselves. They didn't even ask me who I was at that point. They did several days later, but up until that time, as far as I was concerned, this was a kidnap for ransom.
Mozambique.
Nearly every Guantanamo Bay detainee went through this treatment, treated as if they were subhuman monsters. This reigns true in the case of Mohammed al-Slahid, who was arrested in a similar manner as soon as he walked out of an airport in Dakar, Senegal. For the most part, Guantanamo Bay detainees didn't have any significant evidence against them. For example, a long-term prisoner, Mohamedou al-Slahid, was interrogated and held in Guantanamo Bay because he went to the same mosque in Canada as a man who attempted to carry out the Millennium Plot, a plan to bomb LAX on New Year's 1999. Although Mohamedou had other connections to members of radical Islamic movements, such as his involvement in the Mujahideen, a United States-backed movement formed to stop communist government of Mohammed Najibullah, and his training in an al-Qaeda camp for this fight against communism. However, he attempted to get rid of all ties to the organization and other movements as he left Afghanistan. What made Mohamedou a target for the United States government was the fact that one of his cousins, Mahfouz Khalid al-Walid, also known as Abu Hafs al-Mauritania, was the spiritual advisor to Osama bin Laden before the 9/11 attacks. However, Abu Hafs al-Mauritania, along with many other members of al-Qaeda, left the organization because they disagreed with the ways of Osama bin Laden. Guantanamo Bay is best known for its use of torture and other enhanced interrogation tactics, waterboarding being the most infamous. Along with waterboarding, detainees at Guantanamo Bay were subject to sleep deprivation, stress positions where detainees were forced to hold positions which caused discomfort, nudity, manipulation of their diet by switching the diets of detainees between solids and liquids, and forcing a detainee into a small space for a period of time where they could usually only stand or curl up into a little ball. Article 2 of the UN Convention Against Torture states that no exceptional circumstances whatsoever, whether a state of war or a threat of war, or war, international political instability, or any other public emergency may be invoked as a justification for torture. However, the United States used the excuse that Guantanamo Bay was overseas to justify their use of enhanced interrogation tactics. Detainees at Guantanamo were subject to these enhanced interrogation tactics on a daily basis. Shaker Amir, who was held for 14 years at Guantanamo, explains that everything that happened to us was a war crime. The news agency that interviewed him also reported that he said he was forced to drink sewage water during a prolonged hunger strike, and there was no limit to the interrogation techniques used. This includes threats of rape to his daughter and other threats to his family. Another prisoner, Majid Khan, stated that, "I lived every day and every moment with anxiety. I wanted to be killed." Even former Guantanamo guard Brandon Neely weighed in, talking about an experience he had working at the prison. "It was just me and a detainee in there," he said. "The IRF team opened the cell door, grabbed me by the back of my uniform, and pulled me outside. And they just went in there and hog-tied him, and left him there for I don't know how long." Prisoners at Guantanamo Bay are treated with no respect and have their rights violated regularly. In addition, the detainees at Guantanamo also lack the full extent of habeas corpus rights. Once again referencing the story of Mohamedou Aled Slahid, Mohamedou continually questioned his detainment in Guantanamo, telling the government that he had already told them everything that he knew. Yet the government still tried to get information out of these detainees, in some cases practicing enhanced interrogation tactics and violating human rights in order to get information that simply did not exist in the mind of the detainee. Habeas corpus is one of the most sacred rights since the birth of our nation, and before the ruling of Razzle versus Bush in 2004, the detainees lacked this sacred right. However, even after the ruling, the obstacles kept popping up and preventing detainees such as Mohamedou Aled Slahid, among others, from using the full extent of their habeas corpus rights. The lack of habeas corpus rights for Guantanamo Bay detainees draws connection back to the Civil War, where Lincoln suspended habeas corpus to help put down the rebellion in the South. The CIA suspended habeas corpus rights of Guantanamo Bay detainees for similar reasons. They saw a rising threat in the Middle East similar to the way Lincoln saw a rising threat in the South, and they used the suspension of habeas corpus in order to help fight the movement. The torture methods used in Guantanamo Bay can be compared to those used in medieval times, as they were done with absolutely no regard to the person being tortured. Even though the torture methods in Guantanamo Bay were not as brutal as the ones in medieval times, they still showed no regard for the persons being tortured. The amount of free rein the CIA has in interrogating detainees can also be compared to the free rein the interrogators of medieval times. The CIA was completely free to use the most brutal methods they saw fit, including waterboarding, and nobody could do anything to stop him. Although Guantanamo Bay is still allowed to operate, the public has begun to critique its unethical practices. These political cartoons depict public disapproval of the government's activities at Guantanamo Bay by showing that they threw many of the constitutional rights we hold dear as Americans in the toilet. Public dissent doesn't stop there. In yet another example of public disapproval, this comic shows that the public is aware and upset by the inhumane treatment at Guantanamo Bay and wishes to see an end to such action. Due to the atrocities at Guantanamo Bay Detention Center, the Democratic Party has made its closing part of their platform. The main voice advocating for closure is that of President Barack Obama. He stated, "I don't want to pass this problem on to the next president, whoever it is." Obama said, "If we don't do what's required now, I think future generations will look back and are going to ask why we failed when the right course, the right side of history and justice, and our best tradition was clear." He said that closing Guantanamo Bay Detention Center would be one of the first things he did as president. However, today that objective still remains unmet. It is because of increased Republican pressure to keep Guantanamo Bay open, as many Americans do not want these so-called terrorists transferred onto our home soil. However, the Democratic Party still continues to fight to close Guantanamo. We are sustainably reducing the population at Guantanamo Bay without adding to it, and we remain committed to working with all branches of government to close the prison altogether, because it is inconsistent with our national security interest and our values, says the new platform leader Josh Gerstein. 80 prisoners still remain in Guantanamo Bay today, including Mohamedou Aled Slahid. Even though vast amounts of people have called for its closure, it still remains open today due to concerns over security of the mainland, voiced mainly by Republicans. Even though some detainees have serious charges against them that have not been made up, Guantanamo cannot be allowed to remain open, as the practices of scooping up suspects with no charges against them, torturing them, and denying them the full extent of their habeas corpus rights leaves a strain on what America stands for: freedom, justice, and liberty.
I don't know how long it's been. The songs have been on loop for Allah knows how long. It's loud, so loud. I'm not sure I could hear anything else, even if it all stopped. Time seems to deconstruct. All I know is I'm tired. Every fiber of my being tells me to sleep, to let the night take me, but there is no night here, and there is no rest. I just want it all to be over, and I pray to Allah that it will end soon. Yet the monsters keep me here. I have done nothing wrong, yet they see me as an evil that wishes to harm their countrymen. I never wanted to bring harm to anyone. I wanted to drive the scourge of communism from my homeland, but the ties I made oh so long ago have bound me here, to this hell, and I see almost no hope of escaping.
You're part of the conspiracy against the United States.
You can pull this charge on anybody. What have I done?
I don't know, you tell me. My superiors tell me that Muhammadu al-Slaheed knows something. He was in Canada and attended the same mosque as the perpetrator of the Millennium Plot, and his cousin was the spiritual advisor of Osama bin Laden. That can't be a mere coincidence. These goddamn terrorists are all in cahoots together. We have to find a way to get the information out of him. Even if we have to cut him open in order to get the slightest bit of information on Osama bin Laden, it'll be worth it. Their lives mean nothing in comparison to the safety of America. Get up, it's time for torture.
I've already told you everything.
You haven't told me anything I want to know. Where is Osama bin Laden?
I already told you, I don't know.
We know you know where he is, and we know you knew about 9/11. Tell me what I want to know.
I didn't know about 9/11.
If you don't tell me something right now, you're going in the box.
I've told you everything. I can't tell you anymore.
Fine. Get in there. Tell me something I want to know.
I don't know.
Tell me something I want to know, or you're in here for days.
I don't know.
That's it. You're going
I've
in.
already told you everything.
Hope has blessed me. I hope to be free in the near future. I am going to fight my detainment tooth and nail to show I do not belong here, to show I have done nothing wrong. I have hope that the U.S. justice system will come to its senses.